All right, what's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Living the Dream podcast. Today on the show, we're talking about Proverbs 2, verses 18 through 22. So let's jump into it. It reads, "For her house sinks down to death, and her paths to the departed. None who go to her come back, nor do they regain the paths of life. So you will walk in the way of the good, and keep to the paths of the righteous. For the upright will inhabit the land, and those with integrity will remain in it. But the wicked will be cut off from the land, and the treacherous will be rooted out of it." So this verse really spoke to me when it was talking about walking the way of the good. It was talking about integrity, and it was talking about the wicked being cut off from the land and the treacherous being rooted out of it. And I'm going to talk briefly about those 3 points. So first, we're going to talk about the wicked being cut off from the land and the treacherous being rooted out of it. When I think of the promises that God made to us in the Bible of like love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control, when you walk in step with the Spirit, the peace of Christ being given to us being the salt of the earth, the light of the world, all those royal priesthood, those all sound very positive. And I'm not saying we aren't called to have joy in suffering, because there will be suffering as humans and we will have joy in it. But when I think of being cut off from the land because of my wickedness, I think of like a lack of faith. And when it comes to a lack of faith, those promises won't be a reality in your life. And so in the midst of our suffering, we're to have joy. When we're walking with the Spirit, despite our suffering, we're supposed to experience love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. 1 Corinthians 13 talks about love bearing all things, believing all things, hoping all things, enduring all things, rejoicing at the truth but not at wrongdoing. Like, these are all ways we're supposed to treat people and act in the world. And when I think of being wicked, I think of not acting in accordance with that, which means I'm cut off from the land. And in my head, the land is like the promises, what God has provided for us, God's provision for us. And for me in my life, a lot of that is the promises that I read in the Bible, as well as the joy I experience with family and friends. So when I think of being wicked, being cut off from the land and being rooted out of it, it's because you and God's plan for you, your sinful self and God's plan for you cannot coexist at the same time. You have to submit to God, and as you submit to God, you'll be able to receive His plan. So that's what I have to say about that part. And then walking in the way of the good, I think it's obedience to these promises and walking with integrity. So just a quick story about this. I guess this is where it has shown up in my life. My brother and I were talking the other day, and we were talking about, is it spiritually irresponsible to not go all in on our dreams and goals? If we feel God has called us towards something, we see the opportunity, it's really risky. Like, it would put an undue amount of stress on us, stress that nobody would really put on themselves. But it's clear as day that that's the path. Is it spiritually irresponsible to not go after it? Honestly, I came to the conclusion that yes, it is. And so when I have these grandiose ideas about Left with Love and how I'm going to change the world, for me to not be taking steps to go big or go home is like, I think it's spiritually irresponsible, because I had those thoughts for a reason. God put them in my head, and He's put myself into worlds, into spaces, into businesses that show the potential. And so I'm learning and I'm learning and I'm learning as I take more action. So not to say I need to ramp anything up or I need to slow anything down, but I just need to make sure that I'm walking in step with the Spirit. And that's what I think of when walking in the way of the good. What promises does God have for you in your daily living? Are you living that way? And then what ideas, what heart for people has He given you? Are you walking in accordance with that? And I think that comes with integrity too. So the upright will inhabit the land. People with integrity will remain in it, but the wicked will be cut off from it. And so this podcast is about dreams and goals, of course, so I always have a slight interpretation towards dreams and goals. When I think of the land, God's provision, I just think of the promise He has for us. Like, I think God's people were promised land, like the promised land. That's why I think God's people were promised land. And when we are doubting God, we'll spend 40 years walking in the desert, not getting to the promised land. But when we walk in step with the Spirit, I think God will allow us to receive the promise that He has for our life. And so that's kind of what this proverb said to me. Where has this shown up in my life? I would say I just talked about my brother, the kind of moral obligation and to obedience, really. And then anytime I start doubting myself, I see myself being the wicked. And so I doubt myself. I have these intrusive thoughts that I entertain. Everybody has intrusive thoughts, but not everybody entertains them. Like, Jesus was tempted, but He resisted temptation. When you have temptation and you entertain a thought, you are not submitting that thought to Christ. And when you don't submit that thought to Christ, I feel like that's wicked. So I would say that's where it's shown up in my life. I really attack myself with negativity, and then the loophole happens. And I do this when I don't have enough feedback that is positive. And so in Proverbs 3, it'll actually solve that positive feedback problem. But we're talking about that in the next podcast, so tune into the next episode to hear about that. So that's where it has shown up in my life. Where do I want it to show up in my life? I want to walk with integrity in all that I do. Again, that'll be talked about more in Proverbs 3, but it's really like walking upright, walking with integrity, knowing God's promises and walking in them, knowing wisdom, seeking wisdom, which is what a lot of Proverbs is about. That's where I want it to show up in my life. And how can you apply it to your life? I would say seek first to impact the people that you're called to. And so anytime you have an idea, anytime your heart breaks for somebody, anytime you see a problem, own that idea, and take action on it, and take action in faith. I would say that's another place it's shown up in my life, the lack of faith. I just don't go big enough. I don't have conversations with the right people. I don't apply the knowledge and wisdom that I have to my current situation. And so I know it's who, not how. Hands down, instead of asking, how can I sell more insurance? I need to be asking the question, who can I talk to sell more insurance? Who can I leverage? Who can I, all of these things, right? So it's not how, it is who. Who do I need to become to sell more insurance? Even asking myself, what type of who do I need to become? So it's the who I need to become, and it's the who that I need to work with. And so that's another application. Who do you need to work with in order to walk upright, in order to remain in integrity? Who do you need to be around? What does your community need to look like? That's all we got for you guys. Thank you guys for watching the show. We will see you on the next one. And on that note, we're out.